All right, another Monday, another live stream. I'm here with Chris Griffin. Chris, how are you?
Man, I'm doing great, bro. How you doing today?
I can't complain. We both squeaked out the weekend with a win and games that were actually a lot of fun to watch. I think the Bama game was a little bit frustrating because of the defense. We'll get into that, but both fun games to watch, no doubt about it.
Yeah.
You know, one of the things this weekend that's been wild, we got to get into as well as this coaching carousel. Because I know both of us have some feelings about Dan Mullen, and now he's not in the job anymore, and that's wild.
So you have USC, you have Florida, yeah, USC, Florida, TCU,
LSU.
yeah, TCU, LSU, and I think those are probably the take out TCU, but I think those are the three jobs right there. It's going to be interesting to see. It's going to be a lot of money that's thrown out. A lot of names that's thrown out. Obviously, I know everybody has been going crazy about Lincoln going to LSU, but I don't know how many times that report has to be shut down.
I'm sure LSU offered, but like until there's something more, everybody's going to offer a guy like Lincoln Riley, right? Yeah. It's just like it's like with Nick Saban. Every year an NFL job opens up. These NFL teams, why wouldn't you offer him? I mean, he's probably not going to take it, but you offer because it's who it is.
But with the LSU job, I even heard rumblings of Nick Saban coming back there. Nick Saban wanted to leave them and go. I'm just like, it makes no sense. And then, I had OSU fans, and we'll get to them later, but I had OSU fans telling me, well, he could be using this as a leverage tool, just like Gundy has in years past. I'm like, but you got to understand the situation. Joe Castiglione is the head AD there. There's never been that dynamic there. Mike Gundy has it's well publicized how he's had differences with, RIP to T-Boone Pickens, but also with Mike Holder, who was the former AD. So you're looking at that and say there's none of those problems here. And boosters at OU, I've never heard anything about any booster getting involved in a quarterback controversy. So it was just kind of crazy to me. But no, to the main point though, man, there's a lot of great jobs there. I know I read a report today from 24/7 Sports where I think Sonny Dykes is the guy that TCU is zeroing in on, and I'm like, that's a solid hire. I think it's way better than Deion Sanders brings hype, brings appeal, brings mass to it, but I think that he would still use that as a let me get to the next step type of job. It's a step.
I don't doubt that though. As much as I want Deion, full disclosure, I want Deion at TCU. Yeah. I do. But I agree wholeheartedly with what you're saying. And if you're TCU, you're in this weird area, right? Because with OU and Texas inevitably going to the SEC, TCU has a bit of an interesting proposition in front of them, right? Because if they get the right guy, you're in North Texas. I mean, goodness gracious, that's such a great recruiting ground. If you can capitalize on being the team in the Big 12, or at least look like it, you can really kind of change the momentum of your program. Do you get a guy that would be there for a short time, or are you looking for something that's more long-term?
Well, that's the whole thing with Sonny Dykes. I mean, I don't know if, and excuse me if I'm wrong, but he is the coach at SMU, correct?
Yeah.
Yeah. So is that a dream job, or is that just a lateral move for him at this point in his career?
That's a good question.
Because SMU has been better than they've been really, really good the past few years. I swear up and down I had them winning that game against Cincinnati this week. But hey, it is what it is.
I actually thought that was an upset watch.
But with the coaching carousel, I know that we should be talking about the coaches that were fired and all the rest of that stuff. But I think a more interesting point is some of the coaches that would be up for these jobs. I'll go to Iowa State. You look at somebody like Matt Campbell, and I've talked to my uncle, I've talked to other people about this. Is it time for Matt Campbell to get out of Iowa State? Because I feel like with a job like that, you're going to do really well because of what you've built off of, all the steam you built off of the last few years as far as revitalizing that program and bringing them to where they are now. But is there a certain point that you get stuck in a job like that and you give yourself no more room to grow?
I think the question is has he plateaued? Is that the extent of Iowa State right now in current capacity? Now, I think that the question I would want to ask you, just because I think you probably have a deeper understanding of Iowa State, given that they're a Big 12 team, you've had, more familiarity in that sense. Do you think that they could be in a position to really benefit when Texas and OU leave, to really take that next step? That's kind of the question right now.
So here's my thing is that I don't know, because with Cincinnati, if Cincinnati can keep Luke Fickell coming to the Big 12, I don't see how that happens. And I think that to be honest with you, the team to beat that will always be the team to beat in the Big 12 when OU and Texas leave, it's going to be it's always going to be O State.
Yeah, I agree.
It's always going to be O State. So I think with I believe it's who all is coming. It's Houston,
UCF, Houston, Cincinnati, and BYU.
Yeah, and BYU is I say once every 2 or 3 years, BYU is going to be one of those teams that comes and sticks out of nowhere and just sneaks up on people.
I do like the 4 teams they got to add. Yeah. I have to admit, I'm not saying it's going to be the same. You cannot replace Texas and OU from a financial standpoint, from a viewership standpoint. But as a football nerd, I mean, that's 4 great teams to add into the Big 12.
With Cincinnati comes, so here's the problem with Iowa State. Iowa State plays out their mind against an OU team or whatnot. But the problem with Iowa State is let's call it what it is. When they play Iowa, what do they do against Iowa? They play the same game that Iowa plays, and they try to beat them. And we're just like, you're not that team. Play your game. You're play
not that guy, pal.
Exactly. They're trying to be methodical. They're trying to think every play out. They're trying to do this, trying to pinpoint stuff, and it just doesn't work. And Iowa seems to always beat them. So my point with that is that you can play against OU any type of way, do all the rest of that stuff, and be hyped, and the adrenaline's going, 5-star culture, all the rest of that stuff. But when you play against teams with the same likeness, you lose to Texas Tech, you lose to teams like that. So I don't think it's a thing about him plateauing as a coach. I just think that at this point in time, he needs to get out of Iowa State, or he's not going to be able to keep moving on up.
And let me clarify. I don't mean Matt Campbell has plateaued as a coach. I mean what he's able to do with Iowa State in particular. Has that plateaued? Because I think he's a great coach.
Yeah.
I really do. Right? I mean, I know a lot of people, we're going to talk about it here in a bit. I want to talk about some more of this coaching carousel. But when we get into it, a lot of people were talking about how OU's offense may not have had the performance that they had. And certainly part of that is true. But I think a lot of it comes down to you're a true freshman quarterback going up against a defensive formation that you just flat out don't see. So it's meant to create chaos.
So here's the interesting part of the whole thing. We can say true freshman and all the rest of this. I think a lot of it needs to go to the point of a lot of these teams are benefiting from having super seniors on these teams.
Well, no doubt.
You look at Iowa State, and granted, contrary to people's belief, there was a time that OU was up by 14 in that game, and they looked like they were about to run away with the game. So you look at Iowa State and you say, let's go to his comment. Matt Campbell, he came out and he said, this season was not. I did not come into the season wanting to win the Big 12 championship. Well, no, Sherlock. You came into the season with 98% of your team returning. You had national championship aspirations. You were number 6 in the nation to start the year. You came in here with higher expectations than the Big 12 championship. I can damn sure tell you that OU fans, even though we are 10-1, we feel like we're 7-3, 6-4 right now, just the way this team is played. But I mean, it's just one of those things. With all these super seniors and all the rest of that stuff, of course, because they just know these playbooks, they know these guys' experience. They tell it's different from having a true freshman or a red shirt junior come in and they're saying like, hey, you got to be here, you got to be there. Well, you tell your super seniors that they're going to be there in their spots because they're going to know just off of tendencies and watching film and all the rest of that stuff for the prep, they're going to be there. So I think a super seniors have a lot to do with it.
Well, and then you look at Iowa State in particular, right? And we talk a lot about all these teams, and you make a great point about super seniors. To your point, Iowa State is absolutely loaded with them. I mean, you're talking about Mike Rose being a emotional leader on that defense, being a physical leader on that defense. Then you look at the offensive. I mean, that Iowa State team has names across the board. Yeah. I mean, when we look at the makeup of that team, we're pointing to multiple positions saying that's a dude, that's a dude, that's a dude. And on the flip side of the ball, Iowa State's offense, I know that's not their calling card, but in the modern college football, one of the biggest mismatches you can take advantage of is a athletic, physical tight end.
Yep.
They have that. And look, there were times where he was just streaking way too open, but it is very hard to cover those guys because they're hybrid receivers who are so much bigger. I mean, it is so much fun to watch those guys, and we see this new kind of DB being born to try and identify that, right? But it was so interesting hearing a lot of the comments after that game because my takeaway wasn't that the Oklahoma offense had a terrible performance. I was like, well, sure, I think you left some offense on the field, but I think that's a lot of this comes down to you played a really good defense. Like, I think that we all of a sudden stopped giving credit to Iowa State having a really good defense, which was a talking point before this game.
So the problem is that you haven't lived up to full expectations the entire season. So of course the focus is going to be on you. People would love to see you in the college football playoff for obvious reasons. One, we want to see OU in there. We want to see, hey, this team had national championship implications. They still have everything together. Why can't they do it? And then two, obviously the haters out there, they want to see OU get their brains beat in. But it's just one of those things where OU just has not played consistent football through 4 quarters. And there's stretches where
no doubt.
For 2 series, the offense, you can't stop them. I mean, they move the ball with quickness. They do everything. Hell, even on that first play, I know I was watching Gabe Eichert and Teddy Lehman's podcast today, and they pointed out, they said, hey, that was a mistake on that 70-yard run that Caleb got. It honestly should have been given to Kennedy Brooks. And I was looking at that play, and I was like, why did Kennedy look back? He should have just kept going. I thought it was a quarterback. I thought it was a quarterback blast. It wasn't. It was just it was a broken play.
It was an RPO, if I'm not mistaken. It ended up just being,
But for 2 series, you look great. Then you come out there and you look subpar. You look mediocre the next drive. Then defense has kind of been shaky all throughout the game, and all of a sudden it just flips. They flip the switch on, and then boom, all hell just starts breaking loose. And I really like what I'm seeing for the defense now. I think honestly that's been your most consistent part of your team all year. Kind of upset that some guys kind of got cut out of the rotation, especially on the DB back there in the back end of the defense with the DBs. But at the same time, you got to circle your wagon at some point. Trying to make the playoffs, it is what it is.
You got to do what you got to do.
Yeah, you got to do what you got to do. But, I mean, this game will always be more about OU because the thing is that going back to the Baylor game, and I know people in the comments are going to eat me up about this. Baylor didn't beat OU. OU beat OU. I say it all the time. There's only one team on the field who could beat OU. OU always has more talent, more this, more that. But whenever you let a team be more physical than you, whenever you let a team make more plays than you, in the moments where you need to make those plays, that's what happens. You lose. But you're beating yourself off of mental errors and not being able to execute the game plan. And I mean, it goes to all phases of the game: special teams, defense, offense, and then even coaching. Because you're looking at a game, you're looking at that game, and you're saying, why are we not pressuring? Even in the Iowa State game. Okay, I can live with the fake punt, but on that last drive and then the drive before that, why are you playing back? All year you've seen that any cover 3 that we run, any cover 2 that we run, zones, they just do not work. Rush, that's what you're best at. That is what you're really good at. You can leave a spy kind of like you did with Texas, but man, you gotta send
or against Nebraska. With the way that they spied Benito, and I thought Benito had a phenomenal game. I mean, that's one game I went back and watched that a few times and just zeroed in on the defensive front for Oklahoma. A lot of guys during that game had really quality games. I mean, really, really quality snaps in that game, especially Benito from a spy standpoint.
Yeah.
I mean, he had some really quality film in that Nebraska game. It was a lot of fun to watch.
I feel like their best ball is still out there somewhere. I can't even say it's ahead of them. They haven't peaked at the right time like other teams have, but at the same time, I still see them finishing strong this year. And I think that if you put them in the playoffs, you say, hey, Lincoln, if you have your play calls right, there's no reason why you can't give them a puncher's chance against a Georgia, against any of those teams. I don't care who it is. I mean, this team came in with all the expectations in the world. You still have all your players, most of your players. Well, everybody's actually healthy now. Outside of Credell, everybody's healthy. You have everybody back. There's no more excuses. You know, these last 2 games have to be your best 2 games to give yourself a shot to get into the playoffs.
Yeah, Concept says in no other sport would a one-loss team miss a playoff. You're right, but you know what? That's kind of what gives college football its luster. I'm not saying that we don't need to change something, right? I'm just saying that's, to this point, that's been something that's really been a separating factor for college football. And Jant's points something out that's true as well. I can resonate with what you're saying right now because as an Alabama fan, I mean, we've seen the same thing all year. Right, the most complete game Alabama has played this year is against Ole Miss. That was when Alabama was probably on all cylinders, the most complete. Ever since then, the offense looks good, but the defense is terrible. The defense is good, and the offense isn't there.
So I'll say this briefly, and then let you go in on Bama. I was confused a bit, like in that game because. Like I would turn away and come back and it was close. I would turn away and it seemed like Alabama was about to just, let's go. And I remember telling my uncle like that night, I said, man, if with a minute 2 on the clock, I said, to be honest with you, if they had 2 timeouts, Arkansas could probably get a stop and still make this a game.
They could have. So this was one of those games where it was like, I never really felt concerned up until the ending portion of the game, right? Because as time was dwindling down and we hadn't pulled away the way I thought we should have, I was like, okay, well now just by a simple time factor, we're in trouble. The interesting thing, our offense was spectacular for the most part. Bryce was it was so strange to watch the defense maybe have a successful first down, a successful second down, and then a huge play on third down. And then repeat the next time. Do good first down, do good second down, blow third down. I mean, the secondary for Alabama right now is getting toasted. And I'll tell you one thing that really concerns me, right? It's the same thing I said last year before the national championship. When I was looking at that game and I was saying, it's so interesting because Ohio State up front has so much talent, but at the back end, that's a problem. And I remember making a video talking about how, look, if you're not going to be able to get to the quarterback and your secondary is this much of a liability, you're going to have problems. And now I'm looking at Alabama and I'm sitting here saying, if this secondary doesn't play consistently, we're going to have problems. It is incredibly frustrating. I don't know what the deal is. At this point, I never want to call for someone's job, but whatever's going on with Pete Golding, it's not working. Right? Like it's not working. I don't know. I'm interested to hear your take on it. Jance, you already know, man. I'm going to send you a link. You're going to need to get in here.
Yeah, I'm surprised Jance isn't on here.
Yeah, I honestly meant to send him a link, and then we started talking about the coaching carousel, and it just went right over my mind.
Hey, Burks, his comment about Burks was a man that game because Burks was taking some hits out there. But Burks kept coming, man.
Boy, Burks got absolutely lamb-blasted by Will Anderson on that kickoff. That right there was dastardly.
And between Burks and Brock Purdy, I don't know who was getting hit more down. Purdy was taking some hits out there. I was like, man, he may be done.
You're 100% right, OU fan. We've got some stuff to work on before we take on Georgia. We do. And the thing about it is if this Alabama team had the offensive line of like last year's Alabama team, I just sent that link, Jant, so you should be good to go. But if if this hey, I have my Merriam-Webster's dictionary that I periodically peer into. Every now and then I try and have superlative syntax. But the thing that's so interesting to me is if we had last year's offensive line, we might have a fighting chance, right, against Georgia, because Georgia's defensive front is so good. But without that offensive line, and with an offensive line that struggles, that's the part I think that concerns me the most, is when I look at what Georgia does well relative to what we struggle in. I think there's matchups that I like as an Alabama fan. There's matchups on both sides of the ball. I'm sitting here thinking, okay, well, feasibly, this is a matchup that could lead to some quality football and we could take advantage of. But at the end of the day, are we going to be able to get past that first hurdle, that offensive line versus defensive line battle? Because it's all in the trenches. That's where it all starts. And that's the part that I'm really interested in. But you're 100% right. We need to get better before Georgia. There's no doubt about it. And now the one and only Jance Sports is going to vent with me about what happened against Arkansas. Jance, go ahead, because I think you and I are going to say a lot of the same stuff.
Yeah, man, it was definitely something to kind of watch. I couldn't yell. I wasn't angry about it. It was just
unbelievable
the same stuff. It was the same stuff every single year. Job getting burnt, having the wrong leverage, poor technique, not turning around and locating the football, linebackers taking the wrong angles. Henry T, who for some reason player of the week, made some really good plays, but the one play that just made me angry was the fact that he made a phenomenal play by just immediately going into the open gap, making a stop, I think on a 3rd and 1 or 4th
started
and 1
celebrating
situation.
early, let go of the guy.
Just started celebrating early, let the
And
dude
first
go
down.
For a first down. It's just, you just can't make this stuff up, man. There's something wrong with the mentality of this football team, because in my opinion, I don't even know if I can blame coaches for this. I mean, obviously Pete Golding deserves the blame for this. He deserves definitely a lot of this blame, but it's to a point where I can't put it all on him. At some point, you gotta want it. We gotta develop some type of consistency. It just can't be Will Anderson and Dallas Turner,
Turner's having a year.
Who's our 3rd string defensive end, and you can make an argument those are our 2 best defensive players. It just can't be those 2. It can't be one play that Fedarian Mathis makes a phenomenal stop for tackle for loss, and then he gets blown up 3-4 yards down the line. Timothy Smith coming in for DJ Dale. We talked about Timothy Smith being that guy, being the person to replace Dale, because Dale is like Slade Bolden, right? He's not particularly bad, but he doesn't offer anything special. He doesn't really have that speed and quickness and that hand placement that Quinnen Williams, Deron Payne.
Quinnen Williams' handwork.
Oh God, incredible, right? He doesn't have the power like Jesse or like Terrence Cody. So he's kind of just average in that particular mark. So we knew that Timothy Smith had the upside, but he had arguably the worst game of his career so far. I mean, he had no impact at all in the running department. He got blown up every single time, and you're just waiting for. And then our safeties, I don't understand why they continue to over pursue. And they continue to over pursue during the passing plays. I don't understand why Battle continues to over pursue. Why Malachi Moore is always at the wrong place at the right time. Why we continue to have trouble with pre-snap motion. Why we continue to struggle. And I'm tired of these particular same things that we have to talk about every single week. It's always something with this defense, and I know it may sound like I'm kind of complaining, but these are big. These have been happening since the first week of the season, man. So it's like the only thing you can hope for at this point is that you just have to hope that maybe we can develop maybe some sort of consistency against Auburn. I mean, at this point, I mean, Bama fans. I'm seeing less and less Bama fans really start to kind of argue that, that Pete Golding should really stay, and that a lot of our I'm be honest with you, I want this season to be over. I want our 18 guys to be finally, they're going to be gone after this year, so I'm happy about that, and we just move on to younger talent. Nick Saban putting in Kool-Aid McKinstry.
That was wild.
For Josh Jobe. Ty, how many times have we been asking to put Kool-Aid as a starting quarterback? We knew that he was the best cornerback on this team. We knew that. And it finally had to take the second half of a game after Traylon Burks put 100 yards. A 50% Traylon Burks put 100 yards on Josh Jobe to finally say, you know what, Kool-Aid, you're going to start.
And then that Kool-Aid played a great game. in his first start against Traylon Burks, a quality wide receiver, a very quality wide receiver. Played okay, great. Relative to being a true freshman in that moment, the way he came in, played a really solid game. I have a question, Jance, and then I want to pass it off to Chris because I think he has something as well. So I'll let Chris go, and then I'll have you answer both. If I would have told you before the year that Jalen Armour-Davis would be maybe the most consistent piece in our secondary, would you have believed me?
I would think you're joking. I literally would think you would be joking. I mean, according to Pro Football Focus, Josh Jobe with the 92 grade, we all thought that, hey, he can be the next really big cornerback.
He's got the ability.
He's got the ability.
Inconsistency. And the penalties.
Just inconsistent. It's like when he goes against guys with guys that are a lot shorter and are a lot quicker, he can't handle it. But when he goes against bigger guys and Josh Jobe's he's a tall, physical.
It's because he likes that jamming.
Exactly, but he got bullied by a 50% Traylon Burks.
That one jam, just the inside move, gone,
just gone. And then when he finally got his hands, the correct placement and everything, Traylon Burks just outpowered him, just pushed him out the way like a baby, and it was just. Oh boy, man! It's one of those games. I mean, I never would have expected Jalen Armour-Davis to be the guy. I mean, and it's good for him because he was supposed to be our starter over Surtain back in 2018. So it's
coaches have always talked very highly.
Yeah, they've always talked really good about Jalen Armour-Davis. So it's good to see that he finally has that redemption story. Absolutely. But at the same time, you have this supposed cornerback depth that everyone's talking about, and the fact that Jalen Armour-Davis is the best cornerback piece on this team is it's a mess. It's just a mess, man.
No, I was just going to jump in and say I think for an outsider looking in at that game, I think the thing that was surprising was obviously the kind of the end result, the score, but the fact that Alabama could not turn a run first team into a pass first team by distancing themselves enough on the scoreboard to kind of turn them into a one-dimensional team, making KJ Jefferson be the hero with his arm, opposed to being the hero on quarterback runs and all these little design gadget plays and stuff like that. I mean, they made big plays. I don't really think they made big plays down the field. It was more just in the intermediate passing game, just stuff they needed to pick up when they needed to pick it up. But I think that was probably the most surprising thing was the fact that I'm not going to say Alabama was not the more physical team, but I could just say that it kind of shows that you're not able to turn that. I mean, I'm an OU fan, so I definitely know that. But you're looking at a team who is obviously wants to run the ball and run it a lot and be physical with you. It's just kind of surprising that you guys weren't able to take that away and say, no, you're going to actually have to pass the ball to beat us an awful lot.
And you see, I think the thing that surprises me is, we didn't take away the run maybe as much as we should have, specifically from the quarterback. Yeah. We didn't take away the quarterback run the way, but Arkansas came into this game very highly rated in the rushing attack, particularly the rushing attack, right? Yeah. Not total offense, particularly rushing attack. They were like a top 15, I think. I can't quite remember where, but very surprising. When I saw that, I'm thinking, okay, if we can mitigate this rush, now we're making them beat us with KJ Jefferson's arm. And this is a talented guy. But earlier on in the year, if you remember, his average yards per completion was something like 19 or 17, just something super high, which is usually an indication of heavy play action passing game to open up deep shots down the field. Mm-hmm. So when I'm looking at that and I'm watching Arkansas play, I watched them play Texas, I watched them play Georgia before I made my video, and then I get into the video and I'm talking about it, everything seems fine. And then we get into the game. And we're able to mitigate the run a bit, not KJ Jefferson running, right? But the running back, we were able to at least disrupt that enough where I was like, okay, I'm comfortable with this.
Yeah.
I couldn't believe how easy they passed the ball on us. That's where I was just blown away.
Yeah.
Jance, what did you think?
Linebackers not being in the right positions, secondary again taking the wrong leverage routes, our safeties again being confused by pre-snap motion, and it's the same stuff, man. It's the same stuff. And we were getting pressure to the quarterback. It's not like we were not getting pressure to the quarterback. I mean, Dallas Turner and Will Anderson could have had 5 sacks in that game. He was getting held on every single play, whether if he was stunning on the inside or just taking that outside leverage on the outside. He was a monster. And he Alabama, I think, had 3 or 4 sacks in that particular game, but a lot of literally every single sack that happened for Alabama was because of Will Anderson affecting the play. I mean, it was just tremendous to watch. So we were getting tons of pressure on KJ Jefferson, but it's one of those Zach Calzada type of games where all of a sudden KJ Jefferson looks like the most accurate quarterback in the country. And he had some, to Chris's point, I mean, they had some phenomenal passes.
They did.
KJ Jefferson hit some bullets out there, but at the same time, man, I mean, Traylon Burks was literally at 50% health. He was not healthy during that game, and you let a 50% Burks just absolutely kill you in man coverage. And it's not like we don't have safety over the top. It's not like we don't have safety help. We had it, but our safety were always out of position. Our linebackers were always out of position, and it's to the point where we really kind of have to question if Pete Golding putting our players in the right positions, or is it just the players? Is it a mentality issue? Because I can name you 4 or 5 games where where we're going against teams that they're not really good passing teams, but yet all of a sudden they play against us, and they just have this immediate success.
And then we look at Ole Miss, and all of a sudden our secondary looks like the secondary we expected.
Exactly.
And that fundamentally, I think, is the part that doesn't sit right with me, Jance. That's the part that if this was a problem every single week, by this point, I would look at this and say, fine, this is who this team is. The frustrating thing is we saw them against a top offense play great.
So here's the thing with Corral. Okay. Corral, I wouldn't call him a gunslinger, but in Kiffin's offense, Kiffin is always going to have a quarterback who is willing to take some chances and willing to throw that ball down the field. Okay. So same thing goes for a Brock Purdy. And I'm not trying to compare the two. I'm just saying that that's a startling similarity that they both have as far as they want to make some plays. Okay. So it kind of sounds like you guys are really advantageous, against teams like that where the quarterback is, I guess, a bit more willing to pass and make plays like that, opposed to somebody like KJ Jefferson, Emory Jones, those type of quarterbacks who they want to run, but at the same time they have a controlled passing game and they know kind of what their reads are going to look like going into the plays. So it kind of seems like, I guess that's where I'm getting that you guys struggle the most at, is against those guys who maybe are not like off the charts as a passer, but are capable. Because I mean, that's kind of what you're saying. Because I mean, that's the same problem that OU has.
Yeah.
Hey, I just don't even know, man. Like that's. I'm not saying anything you said is wrong. That all sound. I just don't know. I really don't.
The funny part is that Ole Miss is actually more of a rushing team this year than they are a passing team, because they're more of a rushing team. They got a 2-headed. I mean, they're 6th right now in rushing yards.
But they're not as physical as a Arkansas team is. They're definitely not as physical as an Arkansas team is with what they're trying to do because of who their quarterback is. They have to be. Yeah. I mean, that's a run-based offense.
Mm-hmm.
So I mean, they're definitely going to be more physical.
Well, this is Savage says, just wait and see what the Dogs front 7 does to Young. That's the area I pointed out, Savage, that I thought would be the most intriguing matchup. And you're right? Bama has not faced a front 7 that resembles Georgia's. But here's what I will retort with. Georgia hasn't faced a quarterback that's even a fraction of Bryce Young so far.
And that's what I keep saying, and that's what I say about OSU all day, every day. But to that point
Not to discount your point, Savage. You have a very real point.
I still have Alabama winning that game by, if not 2 touchdowns, then more. I
wish I shared your optimism.
I still have Alabama winning that game. I just think that there's something to be said about we could play all the rest of the games, and we could do all the rest of that and everything. Game like this right here that they're going to have in about 2 weeks, your adrenaline's going to be pumping. Blood's going to be flowing. You're going to be excited about this game. You're going to be up because for the first time, Alabama's going to hear They haven't heard this in a while. For the first time, and excuse my language, Ty, somebody's gonna be able to walk in there and say, "Hey, y'all better get y'all stuff together. They're gonna kick your ass." Yeah, Alabama hasn't heard that about any other team. They've been favored heavily in every game this season. So going into this game right here, they're going to be no, and I get this O-line is not that good, but at the same time, Alabama's going to be pissed off because they haven't been told that in a while. So you better believe Saban's going to play that up. You better believe all the rest of the coaches are going to play that up. Players are going to make big plays. And I'm telling you now, the Alabama team that you see against Georgia, I can damn well guarantee that the next time Ty and I come back on here and talk after that game, Ty's going to be talking about, where's this Alabama team been? Why hasn't this Alabama team been here? Where's it been at all
God,
year?
I'd love nothing more.
It's Georgia.
I mean, you're waiting for the second half against Georgia like we had last year. You're just waiting for that moment where it's very similar. Alabama struggled the first 3 games. Everyone, well, I don't think Georgia was the favorite, but I think Alabama was like -3 against Georgia. But
it was
a lot
close.
of people, it was close. It was close. Georgia was winning that game in the first half, and then all of a sudden, just a switch came, and Alabama just went back to playing Alabama football, and it just carried on throughout the season. You're waiting for that specific moment, and I will say this: Bama against Georgia stylistically, Nick Saban. This is going to be it's a dream for Nick Saban because you know what Georgia's going to do. They're going to run the football. They're going to do they're going to do some play action. They're going to probably spread out James Cook out wide, and every time they split him out wide, you know it's going to go to him, whether if it's going to be a wheel route or if he's just simply just going to run a bomb. I mean, Georgia, for the most part, it's a very predictable offense. They're going to, again, you know what they're going to do. Defensively, you know exactly what they're going to do. That's the problem.
That's the problem.
Y'all say that, and Tennessee moved the ball just fine against them. They just ran out of gas.
They couldn't score in the red zone.
They couldn't score in the red zone. They moved the ball extremely well against that defense. Like they were not worried about that defense. They were perfectly fine.
But what did Tennessee do though? They put their playmakers in the best situations. Bill O'Brien has not put our players in the best situations at all passing the ball. There's no creativity. None. It's very simplistic. Our wide receivers running like around maybe 2 or 3 routes. Jameson Williams runs the same 2 or 3 routes, even though we all know he's capable of running every single route tree. We just don't particularly use him. And it's been a struggle. That's the problem. We know that Alabama could potentially beat Georgia. Again, stylistically, it matches Alabama's favor. But the problem is that we're not putting not only are we not putting our best players out there, but we're not putting our players in the best situations. Why wasn't Damian George starting 4 or 5 weeks ago? I mean Damian George had he didn't have I wouldn't say he had a bad game. He let a couple sacks happen, but you can tell right away that George is better than Chris Owens at right tackle. You can just tell he's better at right. He was a better run blocker at the run tackle position than Chris Owens has ever been. It's stuff like that. Like, why isn't our younger players getting more of an opportunity than some of these upperclassmen? So it's just.
Here's one for you, Jits. And I want to answer Savage, right? You're 100% right about. I do grant you, your defensive line has the matchup advantage against Bryce. There's no doubt about that, and that's why I said earlier, I was like, I'm not trying to discount your point. The difference is Bryce is a mobile quarterback, and Bryce is an absolute wizard out the pocket. I mean, that guy is special out the pocket. Now, it is going to be a phenomenal game, but this gets me to a question I want to ask Jance. Have you thought about the possibility and all of the options you could do if you moved Mechie into the slot and put Holden out there or Ajayi Hall out there? And so now you're looking at Jameson Williams, Holden, Ajayi Hall, and John Mechie in the slot. That right there seems like a great – why not do that? Mechie can do anything. Or put Jameson in the slot.
Put Jameson.
He's fantastic out the slot.
Jameson is the number one. I think he's the number one graded receiver in the slot.
In the slot,
college football. He's a phenomenal threat because again against nickel and safeties, he's an absolute mismatch. His speed, no one can keep track of his speed. And then you have another. And again, if you have those, or even Ja'Cory Brooks, who was our best blocker. Not even close. By far is our best blocker. Which again in screenplay situations, why wasn't he out there? Why wasn't he not out there in screenplay situations where you got Jameson Williams has no business blocking. He has no business blocking.
No, I love Jameson does everything at an incredibly high level, but his blocking is, I will be very nice here, average.
Yeah.
Let's just keep it at that. It is the definition of average, and I'm giving a lot. That's just what it is.
Yep.
I wanted to jump in and just say, like, gents, I definitely agree with you on the younger talent spot, because we have the same problem at OU. There's
That's
a couple of guys. Yeah, there's a couple of guys. Look, Broyles is doing. He's playing that senior role. He's doing exactly what he needs to do. Even sometimes with Pat Fields, I know Pat Fields made a couple of plays, but it's like, man, we got talent over there, and we're not taking advantage of that because
so much talent.
I just don't know if Kolar is making some of those catches with Billy Bowman out there. I'm like, give Billy Bowman a shot. Why are you cutting him out of your?
Is he hurt still?
I don't know. After, what's hurt? His pride. I mean, even with McCutcheon, you're looking at McCutcheon. You're saying, how is he not one of your corners? How is he not in your Eaton? Eaton has played really good football this year. McCutcheon has played really good football this year. How are they not in your rotation? You're looking at Grinch and just saying, like, man, I just don't get it. We have a lot of talent over there on the sideline, and we're not playing them, and they started this year for you. So it just doesn't make a lot of sense.
We started this off talking about the coaching carousel, and I kind of want to get back to that now that you're in here, Jance, because what a year, right? I mean, you look at the jobs that are available. So I want to spend some time on this. We also have a question someone asked. Hold on, let me get to it. Mary J. Blige or Alicia Keys?
Who's this?
I don't know, but why not?
I'll answer the question. I'm going with Alicia Keys. By a mile.
I don't think there's a loser in this, right?
Are we talking about looks? Or are we just talking about music? Or
hey,
I don't mind answering the question.
I think right now he's talking about looks. He's asking about music too.
What do y'all think is more beautiful? What are we doing?
We're in the middle of a college football. Hey, I love it. I love it.
So the coaching carousel.
Yeah.
So the coaching carousel. Yeah. What's the best job out there? Right.
That's exactly what I was just about to ask.
This guy. What's the best job out there?
You're not wrong though about Mariah.
Yeah, no.
You already know we're about to hear our next Christmas album.
Mm-hmm. Oh boy, I would. It's I'm stuck really between maybe two or three. It's USC, it's Florida, and it's Louisiana, and it's because of the recruiting. It's because of the talent that's residing in those states. I would say maybe Louisiana more because you can literally build a fence around that entire state and trap that talent inside of there. A lot of those kids are built on going to LSU. A lot of those kids live in Baton Rouge. A lot of the top talent they go to the University Lab or
University Labs on LSU's campus,
yeah, or Edna Carr. Some of those schools or John Curtis. Yep. They're there. Florida wise, you have to compete with 5 or 6 schools, and then you have to compete with the outer. I mean, everyone is trying to go into the state of Florida and try to recruit. So it's a little bit of a tougher time grabbing some of that talent there while competing with 3 or 4 rival schools. California, the kind of the same thing, especially when you have all those West Coast teams trying to invade your state. So I would say that right now, based off of the resources that are there, I would probably say LSU would be the better job. I think it's a much easier job.
I would have to disagree because
okay.
I'd have to disagree because I mean, Florida, Dan Mullen was still pulling in top 10 classes with Florida. I mean, these past 2 classes, I mean, he had a lot of 5-stars, a lot of really good players. He just development was the issue there with him. And contrary to people's belief, he just never got the quarterback that he needed in there to run his system. I think Anthony Richardson is a nice bridge to the next elite quarterback, but you got to get both of those jobs require, because with the LSU job, I'll say this right here, you can't just hire anybody for the LSU job. You got to go hire somebody that people are going to get behind and believe in. Mm-hmm. So that's all. You can say, every kid in Louisiana wants to go to Louisiana State, go to LSU. Okay, that's great and all, but they're not going to go there if they don't have anybody to believe in. Then with the infractions and everything else that Coach O has how he's left that program, they're going to need somebody. They can't just go and get some Podunk, they got to go get somebody. I mean, everybody said Mel Tucker, but I think the person who should be the head man at that job, I think is Dave Aranda.
I agree. I completely
great
agree
hire.
It's just crazy to me that we're not hearing anything about David Rand. I think it's the beauty of the situation because honestly, they're throwing out all these other names, and I think that's the one right there. It makes the most sense.
It makes perfect sense.
David Rand should not go and mess with anything up there in SoCal, and he should definitely not go anywhere towards Florida. I think that LSU makes perfect sense for him. It's home. He's been there for X amount of many years. It makes the most sense. As far as that Florida job, because I know that obviously, you here come the Bob Stoops rumors, and then you have the Luke Fickles and all. I don't know. So here's the thing. That's a better job than Cincinnati, but it's not a better position, meaning that they're not in a better position to win now. And Fickle's going to need more than 2 years to get the type of players that he wants there. And so I mean, as far as coaches or what, I don't know who you go get. But for Florida, I don't know who you go get. But to the main point, I think that the Florida job may be more attractive than an LSU job just because I feel like you're going to have really high expectations, but your fans are not going to be as delusional as LSU fans are.
So I think there's something to that, Chris, but here's where I agree with Jance. Because in LSU, you don't have a Florida State, you don't have a Miami. As not good as those programs are, and I completely grant you that, right? Like they're not all starting on equal footing right now. In LSU, you don't have that, and you don't have distractions, right? Like when we talk about California, there's so much else to do, especially in California. Right? Yeah. Like we saw the pictures of the USC game 10 minutes before kickoff, and I could count on one hand how many fans were in the stands, right? There's just so much to do out there. Florida doesn't have the problem as much. They are obsessive about their football, so I really shouldn't add them into that, but that more stands for USC than it does Florida. I just look at LSU and I think on a per capita basis, can we think of a state that's deeper in talent from a recruiting standpoint than Louisiana, just in a per capita basis? I mean, it's certainly up there, right?
And Florida and Georgia.
Florida and Georgia, no doubt, but man, Louisiana, they have some incredible talent.
I mean, this whole build a fence thing, I think that's kind of overblown too, because
it's definitely overblown.
Picks whoever they want. Your top kids, they're going to get whoever they want.
It's definitely overblown. But now instead of having that let's pitch a fence argument from 3 teams, you have it from 1. So if there is a kid who wants to stay home, you don't have 3 different voices in their head. You have 1 in LSU. And we already know, right, wrong, or indifferent, LSU and the administration there will do whatever. Yeah. Right? Mm-hmm. Like they will do whatever to put themselves in a good position. And so when I look at that, when I look at the lack of other teams in that area, I think LSU is in a unique position to be able to capitalize on a potential good hire, but it must happen. I mean, y'all both know how I felt about Edo. Right? I am not the biggest Edo fan because I think if you're going to be a rah-rah guy, that's all well and good, but you have to know you are a rah-rah guy and then go out and get the subsequent X's and O's guys. When you're a rah-rah guy and then you say, I didn't even interview who I hired as my defensive coordinator and my offensive coordinator, that's a red flag. That's a huge, huge red flag because that means the ego is now running the team. And that's a problem. And I mean, how much money do y'all bet we get a book about Coach O's last year at LSU?
I'll buy it. I'll
buy it in a heartbeat. Are you kidding? Having these kids involved in the drill while the team is trying to practice in the week, that's gold. That's gold.
Y'all hate Edo. I don't know what is up with y'all with Edo, but it's got to stop.
I want him to stay personally. I don't want him to leave. I that's an easy done now every time.
Coach O came out and said, this Alabama's team is not that good and not as good as they were in the past. I was like, ooh, parting shot.
That's cool, bro. You got beat by UCLA.
What?
I don't have anything else to say.
So I guess let's go ahead and put some big names out there. Do you think James Franklin is on the move?
I don't know about Franklin. I think if we're looking at James Franklin, USC would make a lot of sense. Yeah, I think the names I'm looking at, I have 4 names written down, and I can't claim these as an original thought. I know a lot of these came from, I saw Bruce Feldman tweet earlier, and these names are very much well akin to that. So it's not new names, right? But it is names that I think are worth talking about. We talked about one earlier, Matt Campbell. Jant's very interested to hear from you on that. And us 3 have talked about another name, Luke Fickell. We've talked about him, but I think he needs to be talked about. And now I have a 2-for one. Billy Napier and Mario Cristobal. What do y'all think?
There's no way Mario Cristobal is leaving Oregon.
No.
You don't think?
Hell, they tied him to the Miami job. That's whenever I drew the line. I was like, that's a bit much.
See, I just don't know if he would take an opportunity in the SEC relative to the Pac.
Yeah.
That's my question is, do we think Cristobal would take an SEC opportunity?
I just don't think that's going to happen. I think
that's fair.
It's like he built Oregon from the ground up, and then he's just established just Oregon as this recruiting. I just don't think I don't think he's going to do that all over again, where he has to try to get this program to be a recruiting giant, and then he has to.
And he's gotten the guys he likes.
Exactly. He's got the guys he's like that will. From the top high schools in SoCal, it's like you're dominating a phenomenal recruiting area against California schools, and now to kind of travel and try to do the same thing again, only except that you're going to be competing against the Alabamas, the Floridas, and you're competing against those type of programs in the world. It's like you have such a huge recruiting advantage. Why would you go somewhere else to try to kind of build that from the ground up? In my opinion, I just don't think Mario Cristobal is going to let that happen.
Outside of Dave Aranda, Billy Napier is probably the only other name.
Oh, and I'm not saying this singularly for LSU. I'm saying these are names.
No, I know.
Yeah.
And outside of Dave Aranda, Billy Napier would probably make the most sense
for LSU. I agree.
He's from that area. He knows those places. Mm-hmm. And now he has that budget behind him that he didn't have it at Louisiana. Was it Lafayette or?
Yeah, Louisiana, Lafayette. That's right? Lafayette Monroe. Isn't that right, Jance? It's
for Billy.
Yeah, it's University of Louisiana Lafayette. Yes,
Cajuns,
Monroe, right?
Cajuns.
Yeah,
Raging Cajuns. And I think, and I know he was talking to Florida today. I know Florida met with him today to have some discussions about potential head coaching opportunities. I think that would be a good opportunity for him. I think for what he's done with Louisiana of just building that program, he knows how to build a program, right? I mean, Louisiana has never really been a bad football. Surprisingly, they've never been a bad football team, but he took that team to a different level where they're constantly competing for conference championships every year. He establishes, and I just think that he has that alpha mentality. I think that's what Florida's missing. That's what Dan Mullen never had. He was never an alpha.
Agree.
He was always trying to be a player's coach, right? And
doing it weird.
Yeah, and he's a good guy. He's loyal. I mean, he can be an ass, but he's loyal.
Hey, his wife is very friendly.
It's
very familiar.
That's my goodness gracious. But he's a loyal guy. I mean, but he let his ego get in the way. I mean, he should have let a lot of those coaches go a long time ago. But again, his loyalty, his ego, let him get the best of him. Napier is not afraid to fire anyone on the spot. I mean, if he feels like you're not developing these kids, if you're not putting these players in the right positions, he's going to let you go in a heartbeat. If he goes to Florida, that's a dude that immediately I think is going to get the players' respect. I think immediately he's going to be. Most importantly, can you be a father figure to these kids? He's been like that. He's been that to those kids at Louisiana, to the Raging Cajuns. I think he can do the same thing at Florida.
Yeah, thank you for the correction, Big Hud. I always get Monroe and Lafayette.
Yeah, Lafayette
mixed up. Thank you for that. Billy Napier is a great name to keep up with right now. If out of the list, right, I think we all agree Dave Aranda, it makes too much sense almost for LSU. Like, I don't know how that hasn't been done yet. And look, Lincoln would be a great hire if LSU could do it, right? I think we all agree that'd be a fantastic hire for LSU. Not saying it's going to happen, but why wouldn't your first call be Aranda? He's so familiar with the landscape. That to me makes so much more sense than Lincoln, even though Lincoln would be a slam dunk hire. I just don't see it happening with OU on the way to the SEC. That doesn't really make the most sense to me. He's got something great where he's at that he's going to take to the SEC. But outside of Napier, what do you think of a Matt Campbell or a Luke Fickell, gents?
I like Matt Campbell more than Luke Fickell. I think that for Matt Campbell, I think that's a guy that, again, kind of the same thing with Napier. He knows how to build the program up from scratch. Whether Florida's interested or LSU's interested or, maybe SoCal is. I think SoCal would probably be a better fit for Matt Campbell.
I agree.
It's just, I think the thing for him at Iowa State is that I think that even with those super seniors that he has at Iowa State, it's got to be the right time for him, because after this he's literally got to start over from scratch to try to build a different foundation with these kids, with these freshmen or whoever's going to be right behind him. So I think that for him to move on, I think this is the perfect time. I think SoCal's better because they desperately need a coach. They desperately need someone that can bring life to this program, because so far. Yeah. UCLA put up 63 points. I mean, that's just unacceptable. My God, that can't happen. So they need someone that not only is a well-known commodity, but a guy that knows how to build a program from scratch. So I think Matt Campbell should be at USC.
Outside of the year that they're having this year, USC is terrible whenever they lose to UCLA.
Oh man,
yeah, and. It's so interesting because the second that Helton got fired, I was immediately, my mind went to recruiting. And I was like, okay, well, you have 2 5-stars in this class. You have Mykel Williams, you have Damani Jackson. What happens there? I find it very hard to believe that you hold on to Mykel Williams, and that didn't last long. I mean, he dipped set immediately. And Damani Jackson, I think, is well on his way. I don't see him signing with USC when it's all said and done.
I think he's Bama all the way.
I hope so.
He's either Bama or I can see him going to Oregon himself. Hell, be honest with you, the way they steal kids from USC left and right.
Bama, and I know that Michigan was trying very hard with Damani Jackson. Where that relationship is now, I have no idea. Yes. But I know that they wanted him very bad. Yeah. So that's going to be one we have to watch. So I think the way we'll end this right here, I have to answer this right here. Fisher says, OU or Georgia should have won that natty in 2017. The right team won it. But what a great year, though, that 2017 playoff year and the national championship. Goodness gracious. Those were great games. So when we're looking at this right here, right, here's how I want to end this for y'all. Going forward this weekend, first and foremost, what do we think that the college football playoff rankings are going to be tomorrow? And then secondly, what do you think is the biggest game for this weekend? Because we are inundated with phenomenal games this weekend.
I'll say I have Georgia, Ohio State, Bama, Cincy. Then I'll have Michigan right behind them. And then you'll have, I want to say Notre Dame sneaks back into the top 6. But then again, I can see them flip-flop with OU. I mean, not OU, but OSU. I can see OK State being at number either 6 or 7 this week. So I think that's kind of how your top 6 rounds out. And I think to be honest with you, the best game with the most implications, honestly, I think is going to be Bedlam. I think because
it's not a bad answer at all.
Much as I hate to say it, OSU does have a chance to beat OU and keep them out of the Big 12 championship. So I'm not saying they have a chance to beat them. I'm just saying they have a chance to keep them out of the Big 12 championship game, which would then make it a game between them and Baylor. If Baylor were to win against Texas Tech, which I think we all expect them to. So I think there's definitely some implications there. But at the same time, I mean, that game at the Big House this week is going to be nuts.
Great.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
I'll say this, besides the obvious between Michigan and Ohio State, which, by the way, if Michigan loses that game, that's just only going to put more pressure, and Jim Harbaugh is going to get scrutinized more, because this is the third time where not only is this game is on the line, the division's on the line. Like 3 times this has happened for the division. Ohio State has won them all. So that's the game. But, Chris, this is going to be for you, man. I'm telling every Oklahoma fan, and I think every fan should pay attention to this at 3:30. Eastern Carolina versus Cincinnati. Listen. It may sound like a joke. But I'm telling you, Cincinnati's going to get in the top 4, right? I have Cincinnati. I got Cincinnati definitely finally getting in there. I got Alabama at number 3. Ohio State's at number 2. And then obviously Georgia is going to be at number 1. But Cincinnati, man, finally getting the respect that they deserve. They finally get into the top 4. And then you have to travel on the road, 3:30, not prime time, but it's gonna be on ABC, full packed house against the Eastern Carolina team. I'm telling you, they're not a bad team. That's a pretty decent team. And if you look at and again, they got 4 losses, but if you look at all their losses, all of them have been close. They lost all their games. All their games they've lost barely. They have a good offense. They have good quarterback play. They have a great running game. And again, if there's any team that can catch Cincinnati slipping for this particular week, I think it is Eastern Carolina, because you don't think Cincinnati's going to look ahead of Houston. You don't think they're going to look at that Houston game as a very important game as far as playoff implications go. So I think that I'm telling you, because if Cincinnati loses this game and Oklahoma goes ahead and do their thing and they win the Big 12 championship, they're in. Oklahoma's in. It's literally between Oklahoma and Cincinnati right now for the top 4 seed. It doesn't matter if Bama beats Georgia, right? Because if Bama beats Georgia, that 4th seed is still going to be available, whether it's going to be Cincinnati or Oklahoma. But this game right here is a game that Cincinnati can be caught slipping on the road in a difficult environment against a team that is a top 4 team right now in that American Conference.
Yeah. Look, yes. I think I agree. I'd put that Ohio State-Michigan game number 1. I agree with your top 4. I want to go through some of the chat right here, because Roberto says SEC is overrated. Look, it's always fun to say this, but it's very hard to claim that when you look at how many of the national championships over the past 20 years have been claimed by the SEC in proportion to everybody else. What was the layout of the first-round draft last year? I get it. There's a reason that the smartest people in football, these scouts at NFL, they look to the SEC. These people know what they're doing. They look to the SEC. These are not dumb people, and that's where they're going. Not to say that other conferences aren't fantastic, but it's very hard to say that the conference that has perennially brought home the reason we all play the game is overrated. That's tough, because the Big 12 had a chance to beat them in the national championship. The Big 10 did. It didn't happen, right? So it's very hard to say that the SEC is overrated when they've had that dominated.
They're top heavy. That's all I'll say.
That's fine. That's true. I don't disagree with that. But to say they're overrated, they've been dominant. They've been very dominant.
Keep it moving.
Keep it moving. SEC has one good team this year. That's ridiculous. That is so far-fetched from reality. It's the SEC has a top offense in Ole Miss, a Arkansas team that isn't fantastic, but they were top 30 they were top 50 offensively and defensively. The only team in the nation that's rated inside the top 10 in offense and defense in Alabama, and then Georgia, the number 1 defense in the nation. There's good teams in the SEC. I don't know where you think there's only one, but that couldn't be further from the truth. What do you think? Do you think there's only one good team in the SEC, Chris Jantz?
That's about 4.
No. Yeah, it's like around 4 or 5 teams in the SEC that are just really, really good.
And then outside of that, I agree.
Yeah, that's like every year. Yeah,
it falls off, but those 4, and they're great. Well, great relative, but
yeah, it's not like 2012 where you had like 7 teams that had 10 wins.
Sure.
It's not like it's not prime SEC, but it's still top heavy, very good. You have 4 or 5 teams that are really, really good football teams that can compete with anybody. It's just talent. I think that's the thing. It's just the SEC has the most talent, I think, out of any other conference. But as far as winning records and stuff like that, I think you can make an argument that, hey, maybe the Big Ten is better. Maybe in a particular year, I think the Big 12 is extremely competitive this year. You can make an argument they might be the best conference right now in the country. So I think that competitive, but maybe not the best conference. I think this year.
Yeah, look, I'm not claiming we're the best. I think that we're. And Savage makes a point. If the SEC is top heavy, why is Bama playing close games with Florida? I think that says more about Alabama than it does about the conference and Alabama's inconsistencies than anything else. That's just kind of where we are with Alabama and their inconsistencies this year. But that's about it from me. Do y'all have anything y'all want to close on?
Hey, I want to say this right here and listen to me. Listen up, guys. OSU fans. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 Big 12 championships in a row. Okay? 2 years ago, OU comes to Stillwater with Jalen Hurts. Mike Gundy calls his team a triple option team with one player who does everything for you. Well, they should have won 41-16, but that touchdown got taken back. Ramondre, I think, had like a 20, 30, 40-yard run. Who knows? Who cares? Went by double digits in Stillwater. Last year, with the team that we had, we were L-ing. We were doing all the rest of this stuff. We had lost twice early on in the season. Started to get hot midway through the year. You guys came up there. You were running ESPN specials saying that, hey, I think this is the year that we get OU. 41-13. What's the difference? What's the difference this year? What about you this year? You had the same defense last year. You got 35-year-olds on defense with Malcolm Rodriguez and all the rest of those guys, and you're sitting here telling me that we should be worried. We're not worried about that. It's just hard for me to say that a coach that is 2-15, 2-13, however you want to spin it, against OU is supposed to scare me. All because he has, quote unquote, the best defense, one of the best defense in the nation. Last year, you had the best defense in the Big 12. The year before that, you had statistically, you had a really good defense. What is it going to take to get through your head that you will always be little brother? 90-18 overall, that's their overall record, but we're supposed to be scared of you guys. I don't get it. I don't know why you're delusional. I don't know why. Stop it. Stop doing this to yourself. Y'all got to understand that after this game here, O State will be 10-2. And they will say, well, you know what? We still had a really good season. Going to the Big 12 championship game. They'll probably lose this game by 30 and then lose the Big 12 championship by 10 points. And they'll still say, oh, well, we had a really good year this year. We'll have to build off of this next year. No, stop doing that to yourself. You're historically an 8-4 team that has never won anything that has been anywhere near a championship. You have one Big 12 championship in 2011. That was 10 years ago. Okay? Stop kidding yourself. Stop playing yourself. Stop playing yourself. I had to get that off my chest because I'm tired of hearing all this OSU hype because they're doing it to themselves again. OU is 10-1 right now, but I feel like they're 7-3, 6-4. And I know you guys can attest to that because you're Bama fans and you guys probably feel the same way. Like this team has not played to the level that we all thought they could. In spurts they have, but they haven't. Mm-hmm. But at the same time, there's no way if Bo Nix is healthy or not. There's no way that you're telling me that you're going in there and listening to all this Auburn hype that you've heard the past couple of weeks before Bo Nix got injured. And you're telling me that you think that your team is going to just lay down and lose to them. Come on, man. I got people on my Twitter tweeting at me telling me that, OU's going to lose 35-13. There's no way. There's no way. I don't know. I'm sorry for that rant, but I had to get that off my chest.
Hey, it's a beautiful rant. Jance, what about you?
I would just say this, man. I pray that obviously Alabama's going to be going into that voodoo palace, which is Jordan Hare, where some of the craziest plays just goes against this. Some of the craziest moments happen in that game, whether if it was the kick six, whether if it was hitting Najee Harris in the back and it ended up being a pick six.
That was wild.
Whether if it was Bo Picks literally throwing the ball up 3-4 times to Seth Williams and he just catches, and all of a sudden he just magically catches the ball 4 times in double coverage. It's just some of the craziest moments happen in that particular game, and I just pray that we don't embarrass ourselves. I have no doubt that we're going to win that football game. I have no doubt that we're going to shut Auburn fans up, because right now even Auburn fans are saying to themselves right now, we have no chance against the University of Alabama. But when you play at Jordan-Hare, especially with the way that we've been playing, particularly our defense has been playing, mainly the secondary has been playing so far. I just hope and pray that we can finally get it together, that we can finally maybe get close enough to have a complete game, especially in our secondary. Jordan Battle, I pray that you find you're a commander of this defense in the secondary. Please stop giving players the wrong signals. Please, Jordan Battle, stop over pursuing when you're taking those angles to get to the ball. Please, Daniel. Whether if you're DeMarco Helms or Daniel Wright, stop leaning with your head first every time you're trying to make a tackle. Christian Harris and Henry T, stop celebrating before the play is over.
That was unbelievable.
I'm tired of it, man.
I knew exactly what you were talking about the second you brought it up, because I was beside myself that play.
Oh my! And it wasn't just Henry; it was Christian. It was both of those guys, just right there. And all of a sudden, you let the runner take 2 or 3 guys and just carry them for like 4 yards, where you're just in the backfield celebrating. We've been too inconsistent on the defensive side of the ball. And again, maybe we'll save our best stuff for Georgia. But maybe we won't. Maybe we'll go back and revert to how we were the last 4 to 5 weeks. But at some point of the season, whether if it's because Nick Saban said it himself that we got a bunch of poor me's on this football team, a bunch of selfish players that feel entitled because we won a national championship last year. When is it going to be time that we have some leadership? When is it going to be time that we have someone that's vocal enough to sit up there and say, we need to stop this? We need to play Alabama football. We need to go back to the Bama standard. Because right now, you got 12 players on that, and everyone keeps saying that we have a young football team. We got 12 players on that defense from last year that were either starters or rotational players.
The offense is young as far as experience. But
that's what we expected. That's what we expected. We expected this offense to struggle. Yeah. We did not expect this offense to carry this football team. We expected the defense to revert back to what they used to be, and that's dominant Alabama Crimson Tide football. But we have come nowhere close to that. And the fact that Henry T came in during the summer, and the first 2 weeks that he's already there, people already call him he's already a leader. When you had 12 players on that defense that were either starters or rotational players that played in that Ohio State game, all that experience, and you're going to let a new dude from Tennessee after that dysfunctional place, and he becomes the vocal leader of your football team? That's a problem. That's a big problem. So from a mentality standpoint, can we finally get it together? Can we finally come together and sit up here and say, let's show the country that we are Alabama. Let's show the country that we're not pretenders at number 2. Because by the time these polls release, we will be number 3. We will be number 3. I'm 100% confident in that. So please, let's get it together. Let's go out there and let's play some damn football.
Yeah, I agree. That's, I think I've pretty much well said everything. It's just got to come down to consistency, man. I mean, Bama has got to play with 4 quarters with consistency, and at that point, they are one of the worst teams to match up against if they can play with consistency across the board. You do not want to walk into a consistent Alabama team this year. It's just about getting that consistency, and that's something I'm not sure. If we haven't seen it yet this far, will we ever see it? And that's what worries me. That's exactly what worries me. But that's about it from me. I don't know if y'all have anything else. That's about my piece. But y'all already know we're going to be doing more content along the week. If y'all don't already, please go subscribe to the Horns Down podcast. Chris Griffin and Seth Oliveris do a great job there. And as well as go subscribe to Jantz Sports on YouTube. Jantz does phenomenal content, a fellow Alabama fan like myself. And we just love talking college football. But with that, that's going to do it from me.
All right.
All right, guys.
See y'all next week.